Rupert Bell, TalkRadio's royal correspondent, has now arrived. That makes it sound like you actually weren't there. It was all to do with technical issues, Rupert. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Let's talk first of all then about if you don't mind, can we talk about the coronation then, and whether you think that really it is the reason why we haven't seen the order of service, that there is this discussion perhaps going on behind the scenes about whether other faiths will be involved rather more than just being there.
I think the King's view is he sees us, and I think this is what he has always said, as a part, the King of a multicultural Britain. Now, of course, lots of people will say, yes, it's all our, previously the Christian faith, it's all anointed by God and all that, and a part of the Christian faith. But clearly, times have changed, and Britain has changed, and the King is very much aware of that. His Christian faith is hugely important to him, but he is aware that other faiths have a significant part to play in the life of Britain, and I think he sees that as something that he wants to incorporate. But it is a fine line between the traditionalists and the fact that we are a Christian and a Church of England run monarchy. But that is the problem for the organisers, and I suppose the King as well, how he feels comfortable at the service on May the 6th, and that it's one that represents the modern Britain. And of course, that's going to alienate some people, I am sure, that saying that, well, we are a Christian society and why are we changing? But I think Britain is changing, and I think the King wants to reflect that.
Yeah, there's a piece in one of the papers today saying that the Westminster Abbey is under the jurisdiction of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Justin Welby is constantly scrutinised by hardline traditional critics. So it may very well be that the whole point is slightly moot.
Yes, and you know, Justin Welby certainly is a controversial figure at times, and is not afraid to put his head above the parapet, even part of his sermon today, you know, and his Christian Easter message. So obviously, again, he will be at the centre of it. He is the important figure, and has to, again, he will have to be trying to reflect not only the traditional parts of the Anglican Church, but also the modernisers as well. And so there's an awful lot goes on. It's not just a question of the King turning up and being anointed and having the crown put on his head. As we're discovering, there's an awful lot of fine detail. There are, you know, members of the House of Lords a bit upset they're not there. You know, there are so many people saying different things. So there are the people being pulled in so many different directions, but someone has to make a decision finally, and that might, you know, on all aspects of the coronation, and in particular the church service, is the most significant part. That's the whole focus of attention. Yes, we'll have the parade through the streets of London. Yes, we'll have a party on the Sunday in Windsor and other street parties. But in terms of the real symbolic moment, it is the coronation, and that is the difficulty of trying to provide a service from 70 years after the last one.
Yeah. I mean, after all, you can't make everybody happy. There are going to be some mardy people around. Is Prince Harry going to be there, by the way? Any news?
I think I think again they're sort of it's getting rather frustrating, I think, for all and sundry. I mean, we're a month away from the coronation. I think we tend to know what we're doing in a month in advance, and particularly someone who's pretty diary-led, which I imagine Harry and Meghan are. The decision should have been made because they've got logistics and organising. So, again, I think it's part of Harry and Meghan's sort of trying to control the narrative to some extent. The King wants his son there because he wants his whole family there, because it's important to him. But Harry does seem to be making it difficult for them, because it would seem to me to be a simple thing, yes or no. But, you know, for Harry, he's got himself into a corner and he doesn't quite know how to get himself out of it. If he turns up, is he a hypocrite? If he doesn't turn up, well, you know, then does he then completely distance himself from the royal family forever?
I've thought of a perfect solution. He has a bit of a cough, and he feels that it's really bad. He doesn't want to spread it to anybody.
So back to half in, half out again.
No, I'm just saying, you know, I really, really, really wanted to come. I really, really, really wanted to come. You can imagine that, right? I really, really, really want to come. But I've got a bit of a cough, and it would be really mean to give it to so many heads of state, etc., etc. I'm doing the decent thing. Do you think that's what it would be? I'd do that.
Well, Archie's birthday, you see, is that weekend. So maybe he can play the Archie card. And so it's very important to be at my 4-year-old son's birthday as opposed to my king's coronation, my father's coronation.
Interesting stories coming out from the new King Charles book, aren't there?
There are, and I suppose the main focus of one of the big stories is about how the Queen really made sure and how hard it was for her to make even those 2 appearances at the Platinum Jubilee. It was a magical moment, and I remember being there in the outside the palace when she appeared on the first day, and people were so pleased. But I do know that you know, because she missed out on going to the Derby in the middle of that, which is something that was very important to her. She loved that, but it was the effort that she had to go through to get to that final appearance. And I remember talking to someone on the Mall, and they were saying, well, we didn't know until the last minute. And it was only, he suddenly said to me, she's on her way. Now, clearly they're saying, you know, in this book, it was a helicopter. Well, for her to drive even from Windsor would have been a Herculean effort and very uncomfortable for her. So, and it was easier, and then it was sort of, you wouldn't have noticed her, because if you'd suddenly see the Queen's cavalcade going to Buckingham Palace, it would have put her under a pressure. So for her to be flown in to Buckingham Palace and then got into the place without any scrutiny, because she never wanted to be seen in a wheelchair. And as we saw right to the end, she was doing her job. And as she said, you know, seeing Boris Johnson and Liz Truss was about her saying, I will get out of my bed and I will do my job right to the end. And that probably, in the end, was such a Herculean effort for her that she just, in the end, was actually probably her body could take no more as a lady in her late 90s. But to get to that Platinum Jubilee, yes, I can imagine it was so hard. But I remember when she appeared on the balcony, it was a magical moment at the end, because in a way we all knew that this was probably going to be the last time that we would see her greeting her people from that balcony. And it was an emotional moment, and it bookended that celebration. But it probably, for the Queen, was actually saying, I did my duty right to the end, even though I was struggling, but I found a way of making sure I was there just for 20 minutes to greet and be there for her public.
She was a remarkable woman, wasn't she?
She had fortitude like no other. She was able to understand and deal with things. Now, look, it was her family is a fairly complicated and at times a pretty dysfunctional one. But in terms of what she brought to this country as the head of state, that is without question her commitment to the country right from the start. Once she knew that she was going to be the Queen from when her father ascended to the throne, she knew her life was all about service, and she did it right to the very end, even though she was probably desperately ill, but she knew she had to find a way of putting on a brave face for the public, which is what she did at that Platinum Jubilee weekend, which was defined by that, and of course that lovely sketch with Paddington Bear.
I loved that sketch with Paddington Bear. I kept on watching it on a loop. I said the way that she opened her handbag, I keep mine in there. So, just genius.
It was very good.
Genius. Rupert, thank you very much. Rupert Bell, Talk Radio's royal correspondent.